Welcome to the City Current Radio Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference and powering the good in our community. We're honored to kick it off with Brandon Esse. He is the founder and CEO of Meal Pops, the restaurant cash app. And let's start out, Brandon. How are you doing?
Jeremy, man, I'm doing great. Thank you so much to yourself and City Current for having me on today. Super excited to be here and announce what we have going on and to talk about Meal Pops.
So you have a lot of good going on and a lot of innovation. And so when you talk about Meal Pops, the restaurant cash app, let's start with a little bit of history because you're coming out of Bunker Labs. You've got a lot on the entrepreneurial side. So give us some history.
Yeah, that'd be great. So my background is really enterprise technology. We ended up starting the Nashville Bar Pass in 2018. We did over about 15,000 customers, almost 20,000 customers in 2019, pre-pandemic. And just by our organic growth and the way the kind of market adopted our solution, it helped us create Meal Pops, the restaurant cash app, which is that next iteration, really an inclusive product for all restaurants, not just bars, to help people get back to business and get to dining out.
And so talk about how it works, because you have a lot of layers in terms of how businesses can use it, obviously individuals, and then you also have the restaurant benefit as well. So talk about how it works.
Absolutely. So we work directly with restaurants to offer direct-to-consumer promotional incentives. So for restaurants, it's a free program. They offer a small monthly recurring incentive to get new customers as well as loyal and profitable customers. For consumers, I mean, it literally is the restaurant cash app. You get hundreds of dollars of cash vouchers to Nashville's top restaurants refreshed every month. Right now, you literally get a 7-day free trial. After that, it's $5 a month, and you get $50 in cash vouchers to 7 different restaurants throughout Nashville.
And then talk about it on your end, because for a restaurant, there's a huge benefit in terms of really not affecting their margins and making it easy. When you look at other things, like it really takes all the profits out of them. And during the pandemic, obviously, we saw restaurants get hit hard. And so talk about the benefits for the restaurants.
You got it. So that's a huge thing. We really, so my experience and my team's experience, actually our head of sales, his name's Doug Smith. He led Groupon's emergence in the Southeast about 8 years ago. I had about 2 years of experience with Groupon. And what we found is in that model, the way it works, the consumer pays $10 for $20 and basically a $20 voucher to that restaurant. Well, that restaurant gets about $5 in cash for $20 in food and drink. Their margins are 28 to 32%. So we kind of re-engineered that model. And so for $5 a month, the consumer gets gets basically a ton of small Groupons, these cash vouchers with no minimum spend to all these local restaurants. And for the restaurant, they're not actually paying us any fee directly to offer that promotion to the consumer. So their typical margins on food and drink are 28 to 32%. So if you're offering, a $5 cash voucher, it's $1.40 to $1.60 max cost of customer acquisition. And typically when you go out, you might spend $8, $9, or $10 or more for that sandwich for lunch, having a couple drinks rather than one at happy hour. So what we typically see is about $16 to $22 in actual spend per Meal Pops voucher redeemed. And so that restaurant actually makes between about $7 to $14 in full price profit and revenue from using a Meal Pop solution.
Yeah, and then to your point, you get not only the increased spend on that side, but you also too increased loyalty, more customers who might not normally even frequent the restaurant. So it opens up a lot of new doors from a marketing standpoint. Talk about the other benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So when we really kicked it off in 2019, we started working with the National Associations of Music Merchants, which is one of those 10,000 people conferences at Music City Center. And after that, I mean, their actual direct quote was, "We are a must-have for any event looking to grow revenue or increase attendee engagement." And so with that, we just kind of started ballooning after that. So from the consumer side, I mean, it's a great benefit to get new business customers. So a lot of the large employees in downtown Nashville, they pay just a couple bucks a month and give this great incentive to their either downtown or remote workers. And then on the other side of the house, you look at those events, obviously giving them kind of navigation throughout Nashville on what bars, what restaurants to explore. And then for the general consumer, it's kind of that value added incentive to, get to going out to eat, to where as well, getting that free incentive to try new restaurants. You're rewarded for trying new establishments.
Yeah. You also are creative on opening up the opportunities for businesses to use this to creatively reward, incentivize, give back, for employees. And so talk about that side of it.
You get it. I mean, if you think about anything in the future, there is no meal incentive that has the return that Meal Pops does. For less than $5 a month per employee, you can literally give them hundreds of dollars in cash vouchers to all these top local restaurants. So when you look at the West Coast, they had some really innovative technologies like Meal Pal, for example. What that company does is you get about $6 or $7 lunches throughout the city. So with our solution, kind of taking a different approach, those employers can say, hey, we know it's a challenging time. We know that some of our lower levels employees might have hours that are cut or just might have challenges they haven't faced, normally. And then people are also working virtually or remotely. So this gives them the opportunity to, hey, say, here's something to treat you with while not breaking the bank for that business.
Talk about where you're headed with all this, because as you mentioned, you already have access to restaurants, but that's continuing to grow and build momentum. Obviously, on the individual side, the business side, where are you headed with all this?
You got it. So some of our recent successes, we are really connecting with those, large national restaurant groups. And the point is to support those local merchants. So if you get, let's say a Starbucks, a Dunkin' Donuts, we're talking to Crystal Hamburgers, obviously, because, they're a Tennessee-based company here. You have all these great organizations. And by having a couple of those restaurants that consumers are really familiar with, that allows more engagement for the local restaurant. And so our real next step is to expand throughout Tennessee. And we do work with a lot of regional partners. So our goal is to start in Nashville and then expand throughout Tennessee rather quickly, hopefully by the end of the summer.
What's something that you've learned during the pandemic that you think is going to make you as an organization, as a company, stronger?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the pandemic threw a lot of curveballs, especially through the hospitality industry. And the best advice I'd give to any entrepreneur, if you think it's going to take a month, it'll take 3. If you think it's going to take a year, it's going to take 2. And no matter how smart, how prepared, how on top, how assertive, things take longer because you don't know the challenges that will arise. So in terms of planning, if you double or triple it, usually you're, in the right time frame of when things come to fruition and really happen.
Well, and I think too, when you talk about technology, that gives you an edge, especially when, as we're going through the pandemic and we don't necessarily have access in person, this gives you the ability, and then all of a sudden you can leverage it, like you said, for dine in, but also takeout. So, I mean, you've got a lot of opportunities you can leverage with this, especially being a technology platform, to be able to grow and obviously thrive even through difficult circumstances. Carry that forward into, on your end, how the entrepreneurial ecosystem and going through that, how has that benefited you all?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because, my team, they really tell me, and they really went into it, you've built this company on Nashville's free programs. And we started out, when I started this company back in 2018, I literally went to Princess Hot Chicken before they closed down their original location, and was approached by a couple, I'll call them at-risk youth, selling candy bars for their different football teams. And it wasn't football season. And so I knew what they were doing. They were trying to be entrepreneurial and assertive. And so I saw that there were, especially children in this local community. I had previously led a youth group back from Northern Virginia, where I'm formerly from, and sat on the board of Big Brothers and Big Sisters. And so I knew there was a solution to this problem. So I kind of took that Groupon experience and then, really just went to businesses and said, hey, let's, seize this opportunity and give back to these children in the local community. So kind of one of the things that's really cool from that is, you can just see a problem in the community and you can, address it, which has been great with us. With that being said, I was left with not many resources. I'm not from Nashville. I've been here about 3 years. I have the experience, I have the idea, but what now? How can I do a lot with very little? And so I went to the Nashville Entrepreneur Center and I literally rented their, desk space for $100 a month for, almost a year. And I literally, could pay about half the time and they worked with me. And that was the best thing I ever did because that $100 put me in a position, or those, $600 for a whole year, pretty much at that point, put me in a position where I had a community, I had resources, I had people that, did their best to help and give me guidance for the small things that I need. and also gave me some credibility in the community. You know, I'm at the Entrepreneur Center. These are people we know, mutual connections, and really gave me the footing in the community to grow. And I will say that, you know, my first impression there, a couple of the advisors, I met with them and they said, Brandon, you know, I see you here every day. Like you're one of those kids that, you know, one of those guys that just won't stop showing up. And I said, I can't, I just have something and I have to get it out. And they said, tell me about it. And I told them our story and they said, wow, you're really, you know, biting off a lot there. You know, good luck. That's a big task. And I'm like, we're all entrepreneurs. It's all a big task. And I'm looking back, I realized what they said. You know, I'm not starting an insurance company or you know, something that's been done. I'm taking this idea from nothing and creating this completely new platform. And so there's not one solution that's already played out. You're creating everything from beginning to end. So it's like baking a cake, but instead of using a recipe, you're ideating, and that's a different challenge. So, you know, after that, the Entrepreneurial Center, you know, got us in HubSpot for startups, Google for startups. I took on two executives and co-founders, my chief operations officer, Sean Syed, and I mentioned Doug earlier, my head of sales. And we, you know, from there, we turned the Nashville Bar Pass and the Meal Pops to Restaurant Cash App. We got accepted to Bunker Labs, their veterans and residents program. So to be honest, I mean, the entrepreneur in Nashville, the community in Nashville has made my company what it is today. And if, you know, I wouldn't have made that call and walked into that open house, I would never have, you know, been able to, you know, take my experience to Entrepreneur Center with those, you know, very low cost and free programs, and then, you know, be able to catapult to where we are at today.
You've already shared some great advice for entrepreneurs in terms of, you know, whatever you think is going to take this long, double it and sometimes triple it.
Yep.
Talk about building out your team and, you know, just like you said, baking a cake without the recipe. Share maybe one or two other words of wisdom for other entrepreneurs in terms of how they can kind of take that same philosophy, build out a good team. What are some lessons you've learned or bits of advice?
Yeah. Great question. So people think that they need money to do a lot of things. You know, everybody says I have this great idea, but I have no money. And what I've realized is you can get anything for low cost or free. People want to help you, but you have to do the work. For example, when we did the Nashville Bar Pass and we closed that conference over 10,000, you know, the National Association of Music Merchants Conference with, you know, 10, 15,000 people, you know, we're putting, you know, 10 vouchers a piece, we're envelope, we're doing all these stamps. It's a really long process. That was 35 hours of me sitting there with no sleep, doing stamps, doing the invisible inks, doing the security stickers. I mean, really making this professional. A lot of people, you know, don't realize that, you know, I had to borrow $60 to produce those things to get it going. And I know that sounds trivial, but you're maintaining a business, you're maintaining a lifestyle, you're maintaining operational expenses. So you have to, you know, put together things rather than going to FedEx and printing that for $4,000, you know, taking small loans or doing yard work or doing these little things to build something. So if you say you need money to do it, I would say probably not. I would challenge you to say, have you really tried? And I would say you probably haven't, because you haven't jumped off the cliff fully, you know? And in skateboarding, I don't know if you've ever been down a half pipe, but maybe someone can identify, you're on that half pipe and you go 98%, you stomp down 98%, you're crashing. You have to fully commit. And once you jump off that cliff, you don't see the obstacles, you start seeing the opportunity, right? Because they just happen. If you show up in enough days at the Entrepreneur Center, somebody walks in that knows your business. Or if you're in Bunker Labs and somebody hears your story, you know, they tell you about it. So I think my first piece of advice, you know, that'd be my first piece of advice. And then, you know, my second piece of advice really about building a team is, you know, tap into your network. You know, my team, it was tough to, you know, really get an investor in the local community here. It was tough to really bring on a team with that applicable experience. So my search opened up very quickly. And I went to my Rolodex and said, you know, let me find the best of the best subject matter experts about, you know, what they've done in the past and what their focus is. And I didn't sell myself short. So I took over some of the physical and locality and geographical hurdles that my team has. My chief operations officer, very analytical and Big Four consulting background, is based out of Washington, D.C. And then my head of sales is based out of Miami, Florida. So that dynamic of saying, like an NFL draft, we're going to take the best available rather than that local candidate, is a choice we made. And it wasn't because we didn't want to. We tried to exhaust that for about 7 months of a local search to put these pieces in place. we just really found that we needed that industry expertise. So what I would say is, don't limit yourself to what's in front of you. Make sure that you're really exploring your network, because time is your most valuable resource. Whether you're 25, 35, 45, or 55, you have 2 to maximum 5 years to make it happen. So if you don't start today and you don't go 100%, in 12 months you're going to be starting again, and you probably won't be an owner of a business.
Yeah, that's great advice. Wrap up with contact information. So where do we go to learn more about Meal Pops, and obviously, download the app and the whole 9 yards? Where do we go?
You got it. Go to mealpops.com. You can sign up there, or just go to your app store, whether you have iOS or the Google Play Store on Android right now. The app's currently available. When you sign up, you do enter your credit card information, but it's a 7-day free trial, absolutely no risk. And we encourage you to try it. And for right now, we are offering a free 30-day trial. So if you do download the app and you put the promo code in MealPops30, you get a free 30-day trial of Meal Pops with absolutely no risk.
Well, Brandon, greatly appreciate you and your team and all you're doing. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here and look forward to talking soon.